Hey there! I'm author Sarah A. Chrisman, and today I'm going to talk to you about the history of sewing machines.
All the adventures in the Tales of Chetzemoka begin when Doc receives an intriguingly large package from the Weed Sewing Machine Company, attracting the curiosity of Kitty Butler, the town dressmaker. Kitty, whose own sewing machine is her livelihood, knows full well that the crate waiting for Doc at the post office is too large and entirely the wrong shape to be a sewing machine. By 1881, when our stories begin, so many people already owned sewing machines that business was falling off for the companies that made them, and the men who sold them. They had to branch out into new and different machines to keep making their living, and bicycles were the next big thing. Doc's package turns out to contain the first bicycle anyone in the town of Chetzemoka series had ever seen, and fans of the series may remember that Jacob, who starts the town's first bike shop in Love Will Find a Wheel, had begun his career as a door-to-door sewing machine salesman before he got into bicycles. Going back farther in time, the early history of the sewing machine is mostly a story of gradual improvements and battles over patent rights. There were some interesting incidents along the way, though, so let's look at a few of them. The first sewing machine patent was issued on July 24, 1755 in England to Charles F. Wiesenthal. To get your bearings a bit in time, this is 21 years before the American Declaration of Independence. George Washington is a 23-year-old fighting on the British side of the French and Indian Wars, and Thomas Jefferson is only 12. On July 17, 1790, when Washington was in office as our first president, but before the White House itself existed yet, over in England a man by the name of Thomas Saint took out another patent on a slightly different sewing machine. Saint's model sent up a number of features that would become important on all sewing machines of any significance which followed it: an overhanging arm, a horizontal cloth plate, and a feed working automatically between the stitches. These important features were retained in all subsequent sewing machines which enjoyed any commercial success. Time went on. Other innovations were tried, and some of them were patented. Sometimes innovators found that events out of their control got in the way of any commercial success. In early 19th century France, a tailor by the name of Barthélemy Timonier became obsessed with the idea of creating a practical sewing machine, and he worked so hard on developing one that he neglected his business and all his neighbors called him crazy. By 1829, he had a working model. By 1830, he had a patent. By 1831, he was in charge of 80 machines making uniforms for the French troops. Unfortunately, his fellow tailors viewed Timonier's machine as a threat. A mob of them broke into his workshop and smashed all they could find. Timonier fled and later tried to rebuild his business, but the revolutions that broke out all over mainland Europe in 1848 put an end to that dream, and he had to flee to England. Over in America, in New York of the 1830s, a Quaker named Walter Hunt came up with a new and improved sewing machine he could well have patented, but his daughter talked him out of pursuing it, saying the machine would take away too many jobs from women who did hand sewing. Unfortunately for Hunt, the competition had no such scruples. In 1846, a man named Elias Howe, Jr. built a machine based entirely on Hunt's plan, and then patented it under his own name. When Isaac Singer came up with his own machine a few years later, Howe threatened to sue him for copyright infringement on the patent which Howe himself had stolen from Hunt. To give you another point of historical orientation, in the 1830s through the 1850s, when all this "you are trying to kidnap what I have rightfully stolen" business was going on with sewing machines in the northeastern U.S., elsewhere on the continent, Texas was declaring its independence from Mexico, and then we fought the Mexican-American War and got our southwestern states. Oh, and there were a few minor things going on, like the California Gold Rush and that business with the Oregon Trail, but I digress. Coming back to Isaac Singer and sewing machines, Singer's big advantage over other patent holders was that he knew a good lawyer. Even more luckily for Singer, his lawyer, Edward Clark, was also a good businessman. Together, Isaac Singer and Edward Clark introduced the idea of selling machines on installment plan, a rent-to-own system which revolutionized the industry. Letting people pay for a sewing machine 1 month at a time instead of handing over all the cash up front was a complete game changer. It brought sewing machines within reach not just for the upper and middle classes, but all the way down to the working class as well. It was a huge equalizer as well as a huge time saver, and business boomed. The installment plan system was introduced in 1856, and by 1863 the Singer Company was selling approximately 20,000 machines annually. By 1870 this number had jumped to more than 170,000. By 1880 it was more than 500,000. And in 1889, Singer produced their first electric sewing machine. Foot treadle sewing machines are probably the most iconic models, but there were hand crank models as well. Hand crank models are smaller and more compact than foot treadle machines, and for this reason they were popular with missionaries and other people who moved around a lot. In the Tales of Chetzemoka, Kitty, as a former dressmaker, has a treadle machine, while Addie, whose mother tells her that her legs get quite enough of a workout tricycling, has a hand crank machine. My own machine is a hand crank model made by one of Singer's German competitors. The Little Vesta sewing machine was named after the Roman goddess of hearth and home, the same goddess the Greeks called Hestia. It's a very appropriate name for such a hard-working, humble, and beautiful household helper.
Thank you for watching today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up, and remember to tell your friends about my books. Happy reading!